Um, I want to. I'm finding today to be very emotional, so bear with me. That introduction that was just read, I wrote that some time ago, and I've kind of forgotten about it. And I was just thinking about where I was in my 20s, and what an interesting but lost journey that was. However, I'm aware of the fact that there was divine right action in all of that. I kind of want to ground what I say today with that in mind. And that destructive life that I had manifested for myself was more than just my 20s. It started in my teens, and it moved up through my 20s. So what was it about the teachings that we talk about in this room that hooked me? And what was I moving away from spiritually? What I was moving away from, let me say religiously. Let me put it that way. What I was moving away from religiously was a God that, and this is just simply my own, this is just Andy speaking. I'm not, it does not reflect the ownership. We hear those things. The words you're going to hear today do not reflect the management of this radio station. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you where I'm from. So growing up in a religion where my interpretation was a God, a spirit, which is the word I like, but God that I needed to worship and I needed to prostrate in front of, and I needed to just kind of let that God, that entity, decide what it would do with me, didn't resonate with me, and I rebelled against that. And so what was it that I found in the teachings of religious science that hooked me was that I found a God in religious science that is a partner. A God that is not so much a deity as it is an energy, a force. And in religious science, we like to say there is a power in the universe greater than we are for good that we can use, which is a creative power. And so this idea that I would come into partnership with that power would walk with me. And I was looking at this affirmation that we just read. It says, the peace and the power of the divine presence is with me today. There it is. And I remember hearing a talk some years ago by a gentleman who was someone who had written some books, and he traveled around and he spoke in religious science churches. And his life had taken him to a place where he had this incredibly bizarre and exotic and strange and destructive medical situation going on. And he talked about in situations he spent a lot of time in hospitals, and yet he was a metaphysician, and he was trying to figure out where he was at with all that in terms of affirming his health and working with this God, this energetic force, but then coming into the medical community and working so intensely with that. And he said that there was a night he was in a hospital in Seattle, Washington, and the nursing staff and everyone was just so absolutely overwhelmed and overworked. He was becoming nauseated, and he got himself out of his bed. He crawled to the bathroom, and he was vomiting in the bathroom. And he said that at that point, even within the midst of that, he said, I know that there is a presence here that is with me. And what we mean by that is this idea of, we think about prayer like, hey God, if you got some time, could you help me out, or show me what's going on, or take over, or whatever it is, as opposed to that force is with us, that force is ever present with us. Some years ago, when I was at the Paradise Center, I was doing a class at that time that I was sort of putting together myself with some other material I'd gotten, and it was based on the idea when Bill Moyers talked to Joseph Campbell, and it was the power of myth. And I don't know if you remember those videos. This is way back when we still had VHS tapes, so that's how far it was. And I think it was a PBS series, And of course, Joseph Campbell, with the power of myth and all the great ideas that he's brought forward in spirituality. And so what I would do is, one night a week I held the class, and so what I would do is I'd prep myself for that, and I would look at some written material, and I boned up on my Joseph Campbell, and I read his books, and then I would sit down the day before I would actually do the class, and I would watch the segment we were going to watch in that week's class, so I could kind of prepare myself, look at it, get my own reflections from it. And so on this particular occasion in my mind goes back to is that it was the video where Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers, they show clips from the interior of the wall of the caves in Europe where the cave paintings are that go back, umpteen thousands of years ago, our ancestors, how many thousands of years ago, so those great cave paintings of all the animals. And so Joseph Campbell is speaking about those cave paintings and the way he interprets them, because in a lot of our teaching, when you take classes and you get into our teaching, we don't necessarily take things literally. We take them metaphorically. We take, what is the meaning of it? What is this trying to tell us that we can relate back to ourselves? And that was one of in my ministerial training, the person who taught me, one of the things that we did was we would look at the Bible, for example, look at Old Testament stories, and then she would say, okay, I want you to write yourself into the story. What does that mean? I want you to take on every character. I want you to take on what's going on. I want you to relate it to your life today in the metaphor. And I love that. I love metaphor, and I love archetype work. Joseph Campbell says that you look up on these walls and when they were down in these caves, it was, today we have artificial lighting. I don't even know if you can go into them anymore because they're pretty fragile in terms of these paintings, but now we have artificial light, and they had photographed these, on a video. And they said you have to imagine they would go in that cave and it was absolutely pitch black, a type of black that you can feel. And they would light a fire somewhere in the middle of this cave, and they would take all the pigments that they used, all the ways that they got color and paint. There was their version of paint at the time, and they would paint these animals. They would paint, and they would intersperse them with these little figures of people. These little figures of people would have whatever they had in their hands, whether it be a spear or a stick or their belongings. But there was these incredible animals, these herd animals, gorgeous animals. And Joseph Campbell said, imagine, that they're there, and the flicker of that fire going on, and those flames that are reflected on those walls, and it's going through. He says, imagine the energy that what that looked like in terms of some energy that was running through the whole thing. And I sat there alone in the sanctuary of our center, where I had it projected up on the wall, where, with our visual stuff that we had, and I had it up there, and I was watching this, and I found myself becoming completely overwhelmed, because when I thought about what he was saying about the flames dancing on the walls, it was to me, it was an image of spirit. Spirit is there. Spirit is dancing on the walls. What is infusing all of this with light and love and direction and wisdom? And it seemed to me to be metaphorically spirit dancing on those walls. And I thought about my own journey that was alluded to in the reading that introduced me, this time in my life that was so incredibly stressful in my life, and where I was going in all kinds of tough directions, and I was manifesting all these issues and problems and challenges in my life because of my own mindset, my own consciousness. And I thought about those little figures in there amongst the animals. And what we know historically, what anthropology tells us is that, and what science tells us is that the grasslands were the vast majority of the real estate the globe over. When we think today of the Serengeti and places like that in Africa, where we see the animals migrate back and forth to follow the grass and the water and the seasons. And there were all kinds of places like that on the earth, in Europe, in North America, South America, in Africa, in Asia. And so what we knew, or what we know, is that our ancestors would pick up their belongings and they went with the herd animals, and there was this drive there, this migration, where they would go and they would fulfill their destiny, and they would find their way, and they would find life, and they would find, what would they find? Joseph Campbell talks about the cave representing the womb of life. In other words, what our teaching says is that as we walk with this essence called God, this power greater than we are for good in the universe that we can use, that walks with us, we are in an ever-present birthing process of our lives. And Joseph Campbell said they were looking for the womb of creation. They were looking for that place, that essence, that dawn of creation. Their relationship with God, which is similar, incredibly, absolutely aligned with our own relationship with God within this teaching. That we are in that birthing process. And there's this old word, Ernest Holmes and all these guys who came before us in the latter part of the 19th century, early 20th century, in terms of the English language, there was a word that you see dispersed into the writings of Ernest Holmes and the Fillmores and Emma Curtis Hopkins and those people. And it was the word quicken. I remember, you hear like, that spirit is within the quicken of, moving forward, or the quicken of creation. And I look at this word and I struggled with it, and I would try and find it. It's a very old-fashioned word. And I was talking to someone who I admire very much. I consider her one of my kind of teachers, my own personal teachers in things spiritual. And I said, this word quicken that comes up, in these old spiritual writings, what's that mean? And she said, it's that sort of split second, that energetic spark that is just before creation. And she said, in terms of the birthing process, when we get the story of the birthing process from the mother who is birthing, but do we get the story from us who have all been birthed? Do we get that story? And nobody tells that story. The mothers tell the story, but we don't tell the story because we don't remember it. And she said it's that essence where all of a sudden the baby is within the womb and it's like, time to go. And the body takes over. And the contractions and all of that take over. It's time to go. And Joseph Campbell was alluding to the fact that to him those caves were the quickening of creation. It's time to go. That idea that it's time to make a change. And so I sat there in that building watching this, and it took me back to a time in those 20s that you heard about when my life was in disarray. And I knew a gentleman, a very stoic gentleman, who had a cabin in Eagle Lake, and I know there's lots of Eagle Lakes around. It's a popular name for a lake, but the Eagle Lake up around Susanville, up in that area, the high plateau up there, the desert, the pronghorn up there, and things like that. There's this lake called Eagle Lake, and he had a cabin up there. And during my 20s, about my middle 20s, every summer, I would go up there and I would maybe spend a week with him, and I would go fishing with him on that lake in the morning, say 3 or 4 days every summer. And at that time, I was working in lumber mills, and when I did mill work, I did a lot of night shifts, and so I wasn't very familiar with the morning. To me, the morning was about noon or something like that, because I would get off at some time at night. But I would go up there. His name was Jim, and Jim was a very stoic gentleman, very quiet gentleman, few words, Korean War kind of guy. He was a firefighter, And so he would say, I want to be in my boat at 4 in the morning, because that's when I want to go out. He wanted to be where he wanted to be on that lake in his boat before dawn. It's like, I didn't even know 4 a.m. existed except from the back end, I knew it from the back end. I didn't know it from the front end. And so I would get up, and if you know anything about that lake and the elevation in the middle of summer, I mean, it is so freaking cold in the morning. It's just beyond cold. I mean, there'd be a little bit of wind, and that wind, the wind chill factor. And so I, being a California person, I'd dump on a bunch of sweatshirts and stuff and try and get out there. And we would go get in his boat, and he had his thermos of coffee. And he would start that boat, and there was probably about 20 to 30, depending upon where you were, yards, maybe even 40 yards of tules that you worked out your way out of. And he would just idle that boat through those tules. It would be dark, but dawn was coming pretty soon, but it would be dark. And all the birds that lived in those tules would start to wake up and chirp and screech at each other, and they were starting to flit around. And because the boat was just in an idle, it was so quiet, you could just take that in. You could just take in that life. The dawn, right? These birds who, it's like, okay, let's go. The day's coming, let's go. It's that time. It's not like us, do I want to go? Do I not want to go? What's it going to be? Let me think about it. Let me talk about it. I'll get back to you. It's just, let's go. And so we would go out on the lake, and obviously I'm a chatty person, and sometimes I'm someone who, when I'm with people who are too quiet, it makes me nervous, So I got, after my first year there, I realized Jim did not want to talk. Jim just wanted to be in the boat with his coffee and his line in the water, and I believe he was never a man that ever spoke a religious word in his life, but I really believe that out there was the temple for him. And he fished that lake throughout almost every summer, off and on. So we go out there, and so I finally got the drill, and so I would be quiet, and I would just sit there and put the line in the water. And I got to where, I started the whole thing because they have these monster trout up there, and I wanted to, get involved in that. But as time went on, I found that the last few summers I did it, I really kind of hoped I didn't catch a fish because it was just so amazing out there. And I remember to the east, there was a mountainous, hilly line of some kind on the landscape, and you would sit there for a while in absolute dark, and the stars would be there, and then eventually you would start to get that line of light, perfectly over. And then eventually that line would turn into a halo that broke loose. The dawn, the day had come. What are you going to do with the day? I sat there watching Joseph Campbell talk about the caves, and I thought about that time in the midst of all that. And I think that I was thinking about why were you not able to return to shore and move your life? Because in metaphysics, that's what we teach. Salvation, transformation, evolution, it's all about movement. It's all about migration. It's all about what's next. It's all about, okay, spirit, let's go. And where are we going to go? And to enter into the movement of change, healing, whatever, from that place of the quicken. Yes, I'm going to do it. Change is here. Okay, let's go. Let's get in the boat. Let's start flying around with the birds. And that's what I could never grab a hold of. Until what I did was I finally kind of torched my life to the point where I had to. A relationship fell apart. Situations fell apart. Resources fell apart. And then I had to move. But what happened was, and this gets back into the bio of me, is that what happened was once I did make some moves, all of a sudden one day, a very dear person in my life said, Andy, I think there's a place you would like to go. I think it would turn you on, and took me into a place. And like she said, I had no idea what they said that day, but it was like, oh my God, I have come home. Because I think that what I intuitively picked up on, this is a philosophy that honors really the only thing we can count on in life, which is change. And because we have a working relationship with Spirit, it's about, okay, what can we do with this change? Where can we go with it? That's what this philosophy is about. And the Spirit, or the power in the universe greater than we are for good that we can use, is there to supply us with the resources that we need to make whatever change it is. And in my life, in my years of being in this philosophy, and the thing about this, the thing about this philosophy is anyone who comes here, it's not like we can give you something like, oh, we have the secret, let me give it to you. You've already got it. We all have it. It's just that we talk about it, we think about it, and we start to consciously work with it. And what do I mean by consciously work with it? Because what metaphysics teaches us is to begin to tune our hearing and tune our eyesight and tune our senses and tune our intuition to, okay, where is Spirit? What's going on here? Let me read what's going on, and let me align with Spirit. Let me pick up on the cues of Spirit. It's like I work with people who have drug issues, and drug issues are very hard to overcome. One of the hardest things on our planet. But you talk to someone every once in a while, it's like, how many times have you been in rehab? Well, I've been in rehab 5 times. That's cool. But did you get something there? Did you not get something there? Because obviously it's offered, right? It's offered. But did we grab a hold of it? And that's what metaphysics has taught me. That's when the magic happens, is when we grab a hold of all the resources that Spirit is placing around us constantly. Because there's no end to the resources. It's not like, Spirit says, well, Andy's not listening, so I'm going to withdraw my resources. No, they just keep coming and coming and coming and coming if we're there to open up to what they are. I was in the Paradise Fire, and all of a sudden, within a few hours, home is gone, church is gone, job is gone, everything is gone all at once. And so, I imagine myself in the cave, and the herd animals are leaving, and so I grab my little stuff and I go with them, right? Through the grasslands. What am I going to do next? And so I remember my wife Judy and I, we met in one of the Rayleigh's parking lots in Chico, and Chico that day was just crawling with tens of thousands of people, like a bunch of refugees off of some ship at Ellis Island in those old grainy pictures, and we had a few of our little belongings that go, okay, what do we do now, right? And so her sister, who lives in the Princeton area, said, come on over and stay with us. So we drove over there. It took us a few, it's a very short drive. Actually, it took us several hours because every road leaving that area, all that whole night was clogged with people, all the refugees, which we were part of. And so we get in there, and we're both kind of in shell shock, and we're sitting there. And the next morning, I got up, and I'm talking to Judy, and I had to go into Chico and start taking care of some business over, what had just happened. And I said, Judy, we have got to make a move. And she goes, what is that? I said, I have no idea, but we've got to make a move. In other words, I'm willing to get into the birth canal. I don't know what lays at the end of this thing, but I'm willing to do this. I had no idea where we were going to turn to. And so I'm in Chico, and I'm in some grocery store. And again, Chico's crazy, so every line you get into in a grocery store is going to take you a long time to get through it. And so because of what I've been trained in this philosophy is to, okay, you're going through it, this is tough, but open your ears, open your eyes, look, where is Spirit? Where are the ideas? Where are the resources? And so suddenly I'm listening to 2 people, there's about 3 people up, there's 2 ladies talking, and they weren't part of the Paradise thing or anything. They were just kind of talking about the coming summer, because remember that fire was just before Thanksgiving. So they're talking about the coming summer. What are you going to do this summer? Well, we've decided we're going to buy a new camping trailer, and we're going to, there's this place up in Redding, and we're going to get one, and we're going to do this. And I thought, camping trailer. Now, I had never owned a camping trailer in my life. I had nothing to do with them. I didn't know what they were. They were something other people used, right? And there was something about Reading. Now, I'm in Chico. There's probably a lot of camping trailers, but I heard Reading. And so I go outside and I get on my cell phone and I call Judy. I said, I want you to go online right now, look for a camping trailer place in Reading. I'm heading up there, and give me a call what it is and where it is. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know, I've got a crazy idea. I'm just going to go for it. Now, I get up there. Now, I'm not the only one who had the idea. So the place is packed. But what I understood was this was a major dealership of camping trailers, and they said, hey, we know you guys are getting insurance money, and we will work with you knowing that that's coming in. Because I know that none of you have it, none of you know where it's coming, but it's on its way. And if you can come in here with your, saying you have certain insurance, we will work with you. And between the time that I walked in that place, if I think about the sales staff, the financial people, someone who ran a trailer park in Las Molinas, California, when I think about 2 real estate agents that were absolute angels in my life, who finally got us into a place to live about 8 months later, everything came together. If I would just shut my mouth, open my ears, open my eyes, and live in the intention of, okay, let's go. To live in the quickening, right? It's time to go. And I walked in here, and I went online this week to find, remember what time the service was and get, stuff. Because it's been a little while since I've been here. And I see all the advertising that you guys have on your website about your new home. And I thought, oh my God, you guys are living in the quicken. That's where you are. It's time to go. I mean, this is great. This is wonderful. It's been great, but it's time to go. And when you open your ears and open your eyes, this place you're going to, this birthing that you're in right now, you're going to follow the herd animals of spirit, and it's going to become things that you can't even imagine will be the expression of who and what you are. Now, I want to ask you a question. If we were to go into those caves in Europe and look at those little figures, and they were following that herd, eventually, let's think really big here. Where did those people end up taking humanity over the thousands of years that they just said, yes, it's time to go? Imagine that. Where we are today. And it all started with those people saying, yes, it's time to go. That's what the dawn, that's what the light of dawn is. Time to go. That's what the birds know. That's what Jim knew. That's what the ladies talking about the trailer park knew. It's time to go. And so I am so excited for you. I can't wait to see what this center births going forward. And someday there's going to be a cave somewhere and someone's going to paint you guys. Go. All right. Thank you very much. All right. I would like to offer up an affirmative prayer, which is my breaking the champagne bottle over the back end of your ship as you begin to go. Okay. If you join me in consciousness. So as we come together in the prayerful consciousness, knowing that God is truly all there is a power in the universe greater than we are that we can use. And that power is there to allow us to create our lives. And I am so grateful for this beloved center as they begin to step into that place of creation and birthing, into the quickening of spirit that is ready to say, let's go. And let's see what spirit and we create together. Because I know that this center is a tremendous voice of spiritual wisdom in this community, metaphysical teachings. And I know that there is a very special place in this universe for this center. And I know that in advance. And I am looking forward to see where they go, where we go in terms of moving forward. And so in my gratitude for this, I let my word go knowing that it's so. And so it is. Thank you.